Well, hello. We're live again. It's the Behind the Bits podcast. If you're not following my reels on Instagram, you probably should because they're wacky and a lot more wacky than the podcast. I'm really excited to talk to this next comedian because she is in my height category of being extra tall, and I got to watch some of her clips and actually pursued her because she's funny. And so I definitely want to talk to her about how she went from being a college volleyball player to getting into the comedy scene. Let's talk about her a little bit before we bring her up. She was born on Christmas Day, and Shanna Christmas is a Las Vegas native. She stands at 6'3" and played volleyball in college. I'm sure that probably pissed off the basketball coach. She's performed at venues including the Comic Strip, the Joke Factory, the Laugh Factory, and has also hosted at the Hollywood Improv, sharing the stage with folks like Jeff Ross and Dane Cook. And she's also appeared on the world famous Gotham Comedy stage with Judd Apatow and Donnell Rawlings. It is Shanna Christmas. Did I get it?
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, the second time.
Okay. It's hard. It's hard with those A's. Hey, I really
Yeah.
appreciate you being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
So let's talk volleyball first. Were you an outside hitter or were you a middle?
I was a middle. I didn't start playing volleyball until I got to high school, which is, 9 or 10 years too late to be
Uh
trying to
huh.
play sports, really, especially that one. But I managed to do well enough to go to college and play. But I was a middle for the most part. And then my junior year of college, we had a new coach who decided I should play right side, which was,
Oh,
I don't know how
yeah.
that was a good idea, but
Yeah, I miss volleyball. My daughter was a volleyball player, and she was on the travel team and did all that stuff. And then she had some schools looking at her, and then her senior year, she said, I just don't want to do this anymore," and walked away from it. And that's okay. After thousands of dollars were spent on travel team volleyball, but
Yeah,
yeah,
we couldn't afford that, so it was like, hey, if
yeah,
you managed to be good enough to play, good for you. But I couldn't
yeah.
afford to play football, so I got lucky.
So how tall were your parents?
6'4" and 5'11".
Okay, okay. That's my daughter's 5'11", and
Hmm.
she's got a son that looks like he's gonna be a giant. So I'm not really looking
Yeah.
forward to that because I mean, I don't know if you feel like it, but once you're an adult and you're this height, the only advantage you have is that you can reach stuff, and you get all the disadvantages. Like you can't go to TJ Maxx and buy anything, and
Mm-mm.
you have to order off the internet and hope it fits.
Yep, yep. That's it. You're right. I think for you as a tall man, you get paid more because
Yeah,
they think that taller people are smarter for some reason.
they
And they always
do.
put them in, yeah, they put them in like authority figures. So you might
Y-
get paid more because you're a tall white man, but I don't get paid more.
Yeah.
That's
They're just like, boy, she's tall.
Yeah, she scares me.
So I wanted to find out how you went from college volleyball into comedy, or did comedy come first?
Oh no, comedy came when I was 32 years old.
Okay.
Oh yeah, a while ago, but way after I was done playing sports and trying to figure out what I wanted to do with myself. And I've always been a funny person, but I always thought that stand up was very scary, and it's true, it is. So I mean, I'm not wrong about the fear, but the first time I went up on stage, it was like a 3 minute set at a strip club in Vegas,
Uh huh.
as one does. And halfway through my set, I was like, "Oh, I'm supposed to be up here," and so that's kind of how that started.
Yeah. And after you did that, was it like an instant hit with you? Did you decide this is what you wanted to do, or did you ease into it a little bit more?
Well, some people say like, "Oh, my first time I got on stage, I bombed," and I had the opposite, where I was like, I was actually really good for like 4 months, and then I bombed. So,
Uh,
I was super confident. I got this. I'm making people laugh. It's easy, no big deal. And then, later on, it's like, oh, this sucks. And then I went into hiding for like 2 months after I bombed for the first time. But then I slowly came back out and was like, oh, that's going to happen. Watch a few TED Talks, a few interviews, and be like, oh, yeah, we all bomb. It's going to happen. So just kind of figure it out from there. But very fast at the beginning. I was like, you cannot tell me nothing. I am so hilarious.
Uh-huh. Do you think it's a little bit harder for you when you start out like that? That first bomb is just traumatic.
I don't know. I don't know if I would have bombed my first time, if I would have kept going. So I think it just
Yeah.
depends on your personality. Because I don't take rejection well. So clearly
Yeah.
I bombed and I was like 2 months in the hole. I'm not doing it anymore, So I think if I would have bombed initially, I probably wouldn't be doing it anymore. Maybe. I don't know.
Uh, yeah, you can't look back and know that for sure. So
Yeah.
as far as you do 4 months that you're just doing great, and then you bomb and you take a couple months off. What did you do to lift yourself out of that bomb and just be comfortable on the stage again?
Well, I actually started to write jokes. That helps.
Okay.
I've got the gift of being naturally funny. So I really was like, oh, I just go up there and talk because people think I'm funny. And I
Uh-huh.
had some ideas on what I wanted to talk about, but I never actually like wrote out jokes before. And I still kind of don't. That's not really my style, but I didn't know what my style was at that time. And so I would just kind of go up there and say, I want to talk about work. That should be enough time. And then you realize halfway through, like, that's actually not funny. You know what I mean? So once I
Uh-huh.
sat down and realized, oh, this is what you should talk about, that's funny, finding the funny parts in the conversation and then also just delivering it the way that I always do. That's a funny delivery. But writing became part of it. That's kind of built my confidence. Because then I went to a
Mhm.
mic after I wrote out my set and I did the jokes and everybody laughed. And I was like, oh, right. Okay.
Uh-huh. And as you started understanding what the writing is going to do for your act, did you start to get into a habit of writing where you wrote every day, or was it just as it came to you?
Yeah, it's just as it comes to me. I don't, I, I don't know. I feel like trying to force myself to write doesn't feel natural to me. So I'll get in like my moods where I'm like, oh, that's funny. I should write about that. And then I'll kind of write it. And then the next time I'm on stage, I might try to add different bits. I tend to write on stage where I'll have some jokes and then something will come to me while I'm up there. And then I'll
Mhm.
just say it and go, oh, that was funny. I'm going to keep that. But it's
Okay.
it's kind of a mix. Yeah.
And when you start writing this out, are you like remembering things in your life that you experienced that all of a sudden are funny now? I personally, I start to think about, when I was a kid, and I'm starting to write about that because I'd never done that before. And I started writing out some of that stuff, and even though I kind of hated it when I was a kid, it's kind of funny now.
Yeah, I've never been one of those comedians that's like, observational humor or like things that everybody notices or talks about. Like all of my comedy has been very like personal to me.
Uh-huh.
So it's always been some kind of life experience or something like that that I tend to talk about on stage. Every once in a while, I might bring up something that's like, that most people can identify with. But I find it hard to write like that because it doesn't feel like something that's come from my personal upbringing. So all the stuff that happens when you're a kid, it's funny now because you survived it. But I'm sure when you
Right.
were a kid, it wasn't that great.
Yeah. And what was your first big moment where you felt like, okay, this is what I need to do for the rest of my life?
Like I said, when I went to my first mic, I realized I should be on stage. And I don't know if it meant I should be doing stand up, but it definitely felt like I should be entertaining in some capacity. Now,
Mhm.
whether it's always stand up, I love stand up, but I feel like there's more things I can be doing with my voice outside of just telling jokes. But I feel like it was like the first time I was on stage. And then, of course, you get a good set somewhere where there's people in the audience that really like can help your career. That's always helpful. But I haven't managed to
Uh-huh.
do that yet. I haven't managed to impress the people that can actually help my career. It's always, three people in a bar on a Tuesday night. They're like, I loved you so much, you know.
Oh man, I just got that on a Thursday. It was the same thing, and
Yeah.
okay, thanks.
Yeah, I kill in like a low pressure room with like 10 people. I kill in those rooms when it's like
Yeah,
300 people and all these network people are here and they're here to what you're like, "Ugh, I'm gonna bomb," and you just
yeah,
usually do. I usually do. It's not. I haven't figured that out yet. I'm
yeah.
working on it though.
And I know that you have a lot of material just with your height. How are you able to talk about your height and then make it funny and yet disarm people to the point where they're okay? They're not okay. A lot of times when I get on stage, I feel like I'm the freakishly tall guy, and that's all they're seeing in me. How are you able to do that and have them see you as a person and not just a very tall person?
It's actually really funny because I mentioned my height kind of early on in my sets, and people look surprised, like, "Wow, I didn't realize you were that tall." I think it's something about the height of the stage and everybody's sitting, so they can't really tell
Mhm,
how tall anyone is.
mhm,
But I don't get a lot of that until once I get down and I go, "Oh wow, oh you are tall," because I think it might be the stage difference where they feel like everybody looks tall. They're on an elevated thing. You know what I mean?
mhm.
So I don't really have a lot of. I mean, see me as a human being. That's outside of comedy. I mean, how do I get society to see me as a human being? Who knows? But in in terms of comedy, I think they don't. I think I carry it maybe in a way where it doesn't seem like I'm a very tall person, but that might be
Uh-huh,
because I'm trying to make them feel safe at all times. So maybe it's something I'm putting out in my aura to make them feel safe
uh-huh.
before I before I lay into them about other things.
Right. And let's talk about laying in because I noticed in some of your clips you do a pretty good job of that, and yet you keep it funny and people are still laughing. So I mean, you definitely lay into me. You lay into the old white guy thing. So what?
Yeah.
How did that come up, and how are you able to keep it light? Well, I don't want to say light enough, funny enough that it doesn't become an issue on stage.
Um, I actually got some advice from Roy Wood Jr. This was
Uh,
years ago. I saw him do a set somewhere at a barber shop in Brooklyn, and he was killing. He was talking about race and all this stuff, and he was
uh,
doing such a good job. And I said, "How do you talk about these issues without making the audience be mad at you?" He said, "Just say it with a smile."
mhm.
So I'm always like, "White people suck, right?"
Yeah.
See,
Yeah.
and it works every time you laugh.
Yeah.
You just seems very simple. And so and I do think there are certain people who can get away with saying certain things because that's who they are. I don't think that anyone can say anything and not get some kind of pushback. I think I am fortunate enough that I can say certain things and I'm still likable at the end. So
Right.
it could just be that too, but I try to I try to play into like I'm kidding, but also listen, this is important kind of
Right.
deal. Yeah.
And that's what I get from it too. I mean, it's serious and it's real, and yet it's also funny. And I guess that's really the kicker there. You
Yeah.
gotta I mean, if it's not funny, then they start reading into everything else you said and dissecting it and all that kind of stuff. I've tried to do some social commentary, and it doesn't work for me. I just gotta
Yeah, they
be a goofy guy.
yeah, they don't want to hear from you, white man. Shut up.
That's right. Now, as far as the starting to go to, you've been overseas, all around the world, Canada, all that kind of stuff. When did you decide to start traveling, and how did that change your comedy? What did you learn from it?
um, I think I might have been doing comedy for 2 years. I did my first show on the road. On the road, in Arizona, they did this new Faces of Comedy show at the Improv at Tempe. And anybody can do it, but I didn't know
Mhm.
it was a bringer show, and so I'm like, I'm going to go to Arizona. They're like, how'd you get that? I'm like, I asked. Like it, you
Yeah.
know, they don't know who I am. It's not like I have some kind of formula. You just kind of ask, and then hopefully they say you can come do it. So I arranged it to come down here and do the show, and I realized the day of the show they were like, "You have to bring people in order to get on stage," and I was like, "I didn't know that. I don't know anybody here." You
Uh-huh.
know what I mean? It's like a bringer show, but I didn't know what those were at the time. So I got to perform anyway because I drove all the way from Vegas. Really good time, made a lot of connections, and for me, it's always been about making connections everywhere. I can think of a couch in almost all the states now that I could probably crash on if I really thought about how many people I know everywhere.
Uh-huh.
And I think it's important to travel and try your jokes on people that don't look like you or from the same background to see if they do work, because a lot of times you could be doing material that only works for that area you're in, which
Mhm.
when I was in New York, sometimes it's all you hear is about the subway or this. And like no one rides a subway in Las Vegas, so you can't talk about that. So it helps to kind of travel and see the country and whatever, because then your perspective changes and then you can write more all around good jokes for anybody.
Mhm. Do
Yeah.
you take some of your jokes and make them so that they're different regionally? So, like, instead of the subway in Las Vegas, it could be the bus or whatever. I don't even know if Las Vegas has buses.
We do have buses, but I don't know
Uh-huh.
anything about that or what people do on them. I
Yeah.
Everybody has a car there. So it's like talking about driving in New York. People don't drive. So there's stuff you can't really translate to different places unless you travel around and go, that's only funny here. And
Mhm.
some people are really great at telling jokes from right where they're from, and they're happy doing that. But I'm like, I would love to be able to go and see different places too. It's a good way to travel and also have something else to do outside of. I'm just gonna go to Denver just to go. It's like I'm gonna go to Denver and do comedy and also, maybe hike and pass out on a mountain. Who knows? But I've always had this little bug about like traveling though. Like I have a really hard time with like home ownership. I don't want to own a home. I want an Airstream trailer and I want to drive it around and sleep wherever I want to sleep. So
Yeah.
it's kind of always been ingrained in me to kind of bounce around anyway. So
Uh-huh.
comedy helps with that.
Yeah, yeah, it's, liking to travel is definitely one of the prerequisites, I know that.
Yeah. Yeah. Not even liking to travel. It's, some people have really small bladders and you can't take everybody on the road because I don't like stopping every couple hours because you gotta pee. Like you gotta figure it out.
Oh, that's funny. My wife and I have been together for, almost 40 years now, and when we drive, I'm always the one that has to pee.
Of course.
Yeah, and it's because I'm drinking Diet Pepsi like it's the lifeblood, the only thing that will keep me alive. So,
Yeah, you're just in the passenger seat relaxing with your feet on the dashboard. You don't have any care in the world. So you're like, ooh, this is nice.
yeah. Oh, I have to pee. So, as far as your material is concerned, when do you feel like, or do you feel like a joke is done? The this is I've worked on this joke. I've said it 100 times or whatever, and I feel like the wording is perfect and everything is working great. And now this is one of my A jokes.
Ooh, I don't know. I feel like, especially since the pandemic, I was doing a set before the pandemic, and kind of some of the things I said before I say now, but it's a different shift to it. I have a different perspective on it. So
Mhm,
my jokes are always kind of evolving. I have a same kind of theme, but I might take something out that I don't think is as funny as the new thing.
mhm.
So I don't really know if the jokes are done. I think, like I said, I'm always kind of writing on stage, so I might have an idea up there, and maybe this will work, and then just try it. So
Mhm.
every once in a while, there's a joke I do. I'm like, this will get me out of this hole, kind of
Yeah.
deal. But never, never like this is my big grand finale. It's untouchable kind of deal. It's like, yeah, I might switch it around and have a different ending.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as far as the performance part, I mean, one of the things I noticed with you is you look very confident on stage. You look like you are somebody that has been doing it for 50 years or whatever, and you look very comfortable. Is that how do you feel before a show, and how does that translate to how you are on stage?
Oh God, it's such a lie. I really hate that I look confident up there because it's so false. Oh God, I get that a lot from people. I'm always like, "What are you looking at?" Like I am
Yeah.
freaking out the entire time,
Well,
not having a good time.
you're covering up really well.
Yeah, I don't know what that is, honestly. Before I go up, I'm very nervous. Once I get up, I'm very nervous. I think maybe halfway through, I'm still kind of nervous. And then when I get to the end, I'm like, okay, less nervous. But I'm very much a ball of nerves the entire time.
Right.
And hoping I do a good job and learning to be like, oh, this didn't land. You don't have to kill yourself, just try to push through it. I get a little bit
Right.
of anxiety if certain jokes I'm used to working don't work for that reason. And then it throws
Mhm.
me off. And so I'm working through that on stage because that's the only place you can do it. But I'm mostly just very nervous the entire time. I'm so sorry that I project confidence. That is not
Don't
what's going on inside of me at all.
Well, that's, it works, whatever, maybe if you actually were super confident, you wouldn't look that confident on stage.
Yeah, I think it might come off like I'm being an arrogant piece of shit or something like that. And people are
Yeah.
like, okay, all right, we don't want to hear from you. So I'm not sure. It's a very weird thing where I'm like, people often say that. Wow, you look so calm and confident up there. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
I'm just glad you guys like me. You know what I mean? Like,
Right, right.
woo.
Oh, now starting at 32 is, that's kind of what they would say old for a comedian to start. I started at 52, so I'm only 20 years behind you.
Yeah.
But starting at that age, do you feel like there were some pros and cons to starting at that age, and what were they?
I think for me, I come from a family where it's like you can go pursue art when you pursue a job. You know what I mean? So I had a lot. I had to go to work and just have a regular life and support myself before it was go try to do comedy because comedy doesn't pay you any money very much, or
Right.
it's not enough to live. It's not a very sustainable lifestyle, and so I really didn't think about doing comedy because it it was something that was very, like I said, scary to me at first, but
Mhm.
also not lucrative, not enough for me to like leave my regular life to go do it. And so I felt like I had already kind of thought about it for a couple of years and said, you know what, I'm going to try it now. I feel safe enough in my fallback gig in my day life where I can do both.
Mhm.
And so it just happened to be around 32. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Do you feel like and you've been doing it long enough that you see the kids, 18 to 22, they start doing stand up, and it's almost always the exact same jokes. It's the dick jokes. It's just
they don't know anything.
right, and but they do that, and it's because they haven't had all that much life experience, so they don't know what's actually going on, and then it takes them 10 years usually to get to the point where they're actually good, and nobody lasts that long. I mean, very few people last that long, and I
Yeah.
just feel like starting later, it gives you a little bit of a leg up, and you don't have to go through telling all those terrible, awful, cringy jokes that you hear at the open mics.
Yeah, it definitely helps to have lived a life and have a perspective before you start running your mouth in front of people.
Yeah.
Um, I think I think that's the same for like even when you want to go to college. I think you should like live a little bit before you go to college too, because you don't know what you want to do at 18. You don't know what you're talking about on stage at 18. It's
Mhm.
like, everybody should just chill out and, get a little bit seasoned first. You can have a different perspective when you're on stage. But everything is like dating and dicks and whatever the hell. I don't even know what they talk about, but it's not good.
Yeah. And it's already been said, it's just not funny.
Right. They think they're like so original. It's like, we have heard this.
Yeah.
We're old.
Yes. Yeah. Now, when you're, getting ready to, go out on the road and do shows and stuff like that, are you looking at the different people you're going to be performing with, and looking at what they do, and adjusting your act so it's a little bit more cohesive, or are you just pretty much doing your own thing?
When I book myself, usually I don't even know who's on the show until I get there.
Okay.
I hate watching comedy, so I don't usually watch people's sets. I'm
Oh,
always
that's
like, oh,
great.
yeah, I'm always in the back of the room somewhere or outside, and I hate watching comedy. It's the worst.
That's funny.
So
Now,
I never have
okay, you
like, you
hate
can't talk
watch.
about this or you can't talk about. I'm like, I don't know what you said, so I'm gonna just do what I'm doing and not have to worry about it. But I
Uh-huh.
don't watch.
I love that. So if you hate watching comedy, is there any comedy that you have watched that you really liked?
Um, uh, I love Greer Barnes's comedy. I find him very hilarious. Um, I could always watch a Mike Epps special because he's so stupid.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not even like deep thought comedy.
I
It's
know.
just he's just a goofball. I just need to not think about it and just watch him run around. That
Yeah,
kind of stuff is fun. Um, but other than that, if I'm in the room, it's very hard for me to
yeah.
sit
So
through it. I can't do
did you
it.
watch comedy specials when you were a kid, or did you watch Comedy Central or anything like that?
I watched Eddie Murphy's specials when I was a kid because it was so taboo to have somebody talk the way he talked.
Yeah.
And I remember being a kid and being like, "You can't say that." You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
But other than that, no, I didn't. I'm not one of those people that studied comedy. I'm one of the bad people. It's like I don't know who that is. I've never seen a special. I've never seen that. I don't know who that is. And people are like, "You don't know who
Uh-huh.
that is?" Like, no, I don't. They don't know who I am either.
That is so great. I mean, you are a total outlier.
Yeah.
You do your own thing. So everything you do is completely from you. You haven't like by osmosis glommed off of other comedians and taken little things from their act. You are really just you up there.
Yeah, it's so hard too because my comedy is so like personal to me. It's hard for somebody to take my set and what people are talking about on stage. I'm like, that's funny, but that's not something that I would talk about. So it's like, okay. So it's even people's like comedic styles. I don't really, I, I don't know. I'd have to watch them a lot to start to steal it. But
Yeah.
I don't really. There's nobody I really like on stage that I would try to emulate them at all. I just kind of
Uh-huh.
pay attention to what they're saying. Oh, that's interesting, but not so much as how they're saying it or what they're doing.
Right, right. I absolutely love that because I'm kind of an outlier too. I do love to watch comedy, but you know what? All the comedians seem to be whatever scene you're in. There seems to be the Dungeons and Dragons players. There's the Star Wars freaks, the Star Trek freaks, the Marvel Universe people, and none of that matters to me at all. It's
Yeah, what you're saying is a bunch of nerds, correct?
yeah,
Is that
yeah.
okay? It's definitely a niche market, right? You can do a whole show with people like that at a comic book store and it'll be great, but
Yeah,
nobody else wants to hear that.
right, no doubt. Uh, yeah, well, I don't wanna hear it. Other comedians apparently like it, but yeah, yeah. I totally zone out. I just tune completely out when that type of talk starts. It doesn't make any sense to me at all.
I think it's cool, like they have like their own people, it's nice so
Yeah,
they can all talk about the same nerdy stuff, but it's
yeah,
not, it's definitely a specific audience that doesn't really travel that much unless it's nerd specific shows every time,
uh-huh,
you know.
yeah.
Mm.
Now I gotta talk about the book because I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but, tell me about the book, and it's available on Amazon now, right?
Yeah, you can buy it on Amazon or you can buy it directly from me and I'll sign it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. It's about I do occupational therapy, so it's a healthcare book. And it
Uh-huh,
basically is it's just a depiction of all the funny interactions I've had with patients over the years of working in healthcare. So, old people cursing you out or saying something nasty or, being inappropriate or that kind of stuff. So racism, standard everyday life, working with
Yeah.
the sick population.
And once they get to a certain age, the filter's completely gone, if they ever had one. So you get to see what people are really like.
Yeah, we always say once a man, twice a child, because you just kind of, as you get older, you just don't care anymore. And so people just say stuff. And I always find it interesting, as for me being one of like the few Black people working in rehab in most places I've been to, is I'll get white patients that say stuff to me that they'd never say to anybody else. And I feel like they think they're helping, or I don't know. And I there's a whole racism section of my book where, people are like, I always thought that Black people were ignorant and stupid because my mom told me that. I was like, well, your mom was stupid. So there's, you've got some 70-year-old man who's never spent more than a minute with a Black person, and he hangs out with me for an hour doing therapy, and he's like, wow, you changed my entire mind about Black people after 1 hour. And you're like, yeah, you've
Wow.
been walking around with that perspective for 70 years.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like great. I'm glad that I did that, but you don't have to tell me. That's okay.
Uh-huh. Now I'm looking at the title, but I can barely see it. You ain't nothing but a bitch with a wig on. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
I love that title. What are a couple of your favorite anecdotes from the book that kind of show what it's like to be an occupational therapist?
Well, I'll explain the title of the book. It's actually something that happened when I was working in Harlem. One of my patients she has dementia, but she was very mean, and she wouldn't do anything I was having her to do for therapy. And she
Uh-huh.
literally said that to me in front of everybody in the gym. And she wasn't wrong. I was wearing a wig that day, but it makes my job very hard when people are insulting you and you can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
That's the one thing. You still have to be nice to them. If they beat you up or curse you out or whatever, you're still like, okay, So I would say that the title was pretty funny one. There's a sexually inappropriate page in there of a guy who's like 102 years old, and I was kind of dancing in the hallway, and he goes, "Can you do that on your back?"
Oh.
Yeah.
The filter is completely gone.
Yeah, he's 102. You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't care. He's gonna shoot his shot. Hey, who else wants some? Who else? I'll pinch your butt. They're very being gross does not stop at a certain age. You guys are still pretty gross.
Yeah. That's great. Now, do they realize what kind of education you have to be to do the occupational therapy? I mean, you're right there at doctor level when you have to when you do that job.
Yeah, I don't think they care.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say that. They're just like, if you're not the doctor, I don't care. And you're like, oh, you're gonna make me walk. It's like, yeah, you've been walking for almost your whole life. Now you don't want to do it anymore. Now it's a big debate. You know what I mean? It's just,
Yeah.
it's a struggle. But every
Yeah.
once in a while, you'll get somebody who listens to you and they actually do what you say and it works. And you're like, yes,
Yeah.
this is why I went to school, for this one moment.
One out of how many? My dad
Man.
had hip replacement a few years ago, and it was not pretty, and I didn't wish anybody to have him as a patient, and
Yeah.
yet there he was.
And sometimes I give it right back to them. Sometimes I'm not one of those people that's like, I get beat up. I'll be like, I don't have to help you. I try to explain that to people. Like, if you don't want to do it, you can just stay here and I get to go home.
Uh-huh.
And you just stay here. That's fine too. It doesn't hurt my feelings if you don't do therapy.
Right.
That's not my life. That's your life.
Uh-huh.
I've had these hard-hitting conversations with patients when they're being really mean. It's like, if you don't like me, that's fine. We can find somebody here you like so you can get the hell out of here. I'm not always nice to them, but
Yeah.
again,
And
I can
you
get
really
away with saying stuff like that to people because I'm likable in some way.
Right. I spent enough time at the facility knowing that it's definitely not a job for me because I just couldn't.
Yeah, you'd be in jail for abuse.
Yes, I would. Yeah. And now I understand why it happens. I
Hmm.
don't condone it, but I understand why.
Yes, yes, yes. It's very hard to be that restrained all the time. It's whoo.
Now now I wanna get to the reason why I contacted you. Just out of the blue, I saw a post, and then I read your article on Medium, about, a sexual assault that you, went through.
Hmm.
And one of the things I talked to you a little bit before we started, that I've always been shy about talking about that kind of stuff because who am I to talk about it? And then I had another female identifying comedian tell me, you know what, you really should, because guess what, you're the white cis male, and that you're the person that people listen to. So if anybody's going to say it, it might as well be you. So I did,
Hmm.
I read it, and it was heartbreaking to me as a parent of a daughter, and
Hmm.
also a husband for the amount of years. And it was just it was really heart wrenching, and that's what pardon me, that's why I reached out. And I just wonder if you could talk about uh, you know if not necessarily the incident, but what it's like to be a female comedian now, um, even though everybody thinks it's better for the female comedians.
Um, it's very interesting because I ended up coming forward about my story about April, right before the Me Too movement started. So I came out in April, and Me
Mhm.
Too started in October of the same year. And I was like, where was all this support when I said something? Jeez. Um, it's a challenge because I'm working against. I was assaulted when I was 33 years old, so people always
Mhm.
assume that you should know better. There's a lot of shame and stuff that you take on, and guilt. You feel like it's your fault, and all this kind of stuff that society says that women should be doing to make sure they don't get assaulted. It's like, how about we tell the men not to do it? Wow, crazy.
Mhm.
So it was a little bit challenging for me too because all the people in my scene in Las Vegas, I would say 90% of them just didn't, they either didn't support me or they just tried to stay neutral, whatever that meant.
Mhm.
Um, and even while this person was in jail, it wasn't like I just said something and there wasn't any proof. There's like, this person got arrested. They don't just do that because I said so. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it was harder for me because I had all of this proof and there's a person being prosecuted and there's still people around me being like, I don't know, I need to hear all the details first before I can decide. It's like the cops have the details and they made an arrest. So what do you know what I mean? It's this weird kind of people want to hear the gross stuff about what happened so they can kind of say, well, I don't want to talk to this person anymore, or it wasn't that bad, so I'm gonna still be their friend kind of deal to kind of justify their actions. Because I think when
Uh-huh.
you out somebody like that in a comedy scene, especially if that person has more friends or have more clout than you do or whatever, people will overlook that kind of stuff because they want access to what they have.
Mhm.
And which is strange in my case because this guy doesn't have anything. It's like, what are you guys doing? But um it's so dumb. And I think it was very helpful to me to see who my actual friends were,
Mhm.
and it was very very isolating at first. And I was actually in New York when I came forward about it. This assault happened in Vegas. I was far away from him because I couldn't stay in the same scene and at risk of
Mhm.
running into him. So I went all the way across the country. But I was still very much tormented by it because I would see his face in all these flyers and stuff. I was like, you guys are hanging out with the person that rapes people. Like, just so you know, maybe you can take some action. And the
Mhm.
action was let's shun Shauna was the action they
Mhm.
mostly took, was to make me the bad guy because they had to make a decision about themselves, and some people didn't want to do that. And
Mhm.
some people did. They say now quietly, since I've posted this story, now people are coming out the woodwork saying I've always had your back and I told him to stay away from me. It's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. That would have been nice for 5 years ago when I said something the first time, but I
Right.
don't want to hear it now. You know what I mean? So whatever.
So how would you I if say this happens in my scene, and I'm I don't know anything about it, but the one person involved is a friend of mine, you're a friend of mine, or the other person involved, and um, how are how do you do you ever look outside yourself and try to process how people look at these incidents after somebody's call out on it? And um, I mean, it just seems very foreign to me that the dude is in jail and they're still saying, "Well, I need to know the facts." I I guess I'm having trouble processing how people say they need the facts when the facts are pretty much there, because if there weren't the facts, the guy wouldn't be in jail.
Yeah, it's I think a lot of people I tend to believe when someone is outed that there's always been like a known secret, people rumbling behind the scenes about this
Mhm,
person for years, which was the case in for me. People had known about this person for years. Somebody actually yelled at me and said, I've known him for 10 years and I don't trust him, but I don't think he did that. What?
mhm,
Can you explain to me why you don't trust him? You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
it's a weird mental gymnastics for them because then they have to look at themselves and go, why am I friends with somebody who has done this to people? And what does it say about me?
mhm,
And I think they tell victims to go to the cops. I did that. They arrested him. And it's still like, that's not enough. Now you have to come out and tell everybody all the details, even if it hurts you, so we can be
mhm,
the judge and the jury. And I think if I don't know anybody who's been accused of rape or sexual assault. Nobody I know.
mhm,
So if you got a friend like that, I would look into it. I would definitely try to, if the woman is afraid to go to the police, which a lot of them are, because
mhm,
ultimately nothing happens. But I would also try to look at the character of both people. And if you know that person well enough to see them in a different light, you kind of have to take those things and go, well, I've seen him behave in a certain way before where that doesn't surprise me that he can do something like that. And
mhm,
that was at least for me, where it's like, I work at a hospital. I'm a nice person. I've never done anything to anybody. And this
mhm,
person has been in the scene for 10, 12 years. And everybody has a story about him doing something. You know what I
mhm,
mean?
yeah,
So even based off that, it's like, you don't have to know all the details to go, this person seems like he could do something like that based off of his record in the community, you know. But I do understand I got cussed out by um, somebody online and she's like, I've known him longer than you. I just assume that you're lying because I don't know you.
mm.
Okay. Okay. I guess
Yeah.
or I actually have a really good joke about this, which I can't wait to do on TV at some point. It's a very good joke, but it's it talks about rape apologists and how they always say, well, I've never seen him be like that, so it can't be true. It's like, well, why would he do it around you? Why would they do it around everybody? Like if everybody knew they were creepy, they'd stay away from, you know what I mean? People would stay
Right.
away from you if they thought you were creepy.
Yeah.
The trick to that is to be likable and charming enough that people are conflicted because they're like, he's
Mhm,
always nice. Yes, he's able to do two things. So now it makes you feel like if I believe the victim, then I'm gonna lose a friend who's always been nice to me. You know what I
yeah,
mean? It's like
right.
these two things can be true at one time. I think a lot of people have a hard time seeing somebody who seems to be nice. Like, yeah, you know, there's serial killers that are nice too. It's not,
Uh-huh.
Ted Bundy was a nice guy.
Uh,
You
yeah.
always hear that kind of stuff. Like they're nice because they have to be, so you can trust them to get close enough so they can harm you. So it's a lot of it is education too. I just think people don't know enough about what that might look like and what manipulation is and all that kind of stuff to kind of have the right tools to know what to do from there. So
Right.
just got to talk about it more.
Yeah, and I'm glad you did, and it was a hard read, but I'm glad I read it. Did this reach some people that you didn't know that were maybe reached out to you and said, I've been through this, and maybe, or did somebody go forward because of what you wrote, or what kind of response did you get that was positive?
I actually got quite a few people that, mostly men, to be honest, that read it. I had some guy who messaged me on Instagram, and he said he was a high school basketball coach. And he said, I want to show this to my boys so they can see what these lines are. Because,
Yeah.
people think there is like some stranger grabs you and beats you up and whatever. It's like a lot of these interactions are for people that you know. So it's a little bit more gray area. And
Hmm.
so he said, I want to share this with them so they can kind of know when they get ready to go to college and stuff like that, that these things are also problematic. It's not just like one thing. It's such a huge scale of how it gets elevated to something that's outright rape. You know what I mean? There's all
Hmm.
this coercion and other things that go on where you think it's not a big deal, but this person is compromised. You know what I mean? So
Hmm.
mostly men reached out. Quite a few people that have known this person have reached out and said that, he did this to me too, and that kind of stuff. But to get anybody to come forward is just still very scary because they don't want the backlash. So I think, I did look at the stats earlier today. I think like 1,300 people saw it or whatever and read it, and that's cool. That's
Hmm.
kind of what I want, is somebody to see that it's not always just like one way where somebody can be violated. There's so many different ways where consent is just thrown out the window and people think
Right.
it's okay. So I'm just kind of glad I got it out there because I was struggling with it myself. I was very afraid to go back home sometimes to Vegas and do comedy because I was
Hmm.
worried that I'd run into him or people that are friends with him. And now that I think everybody knows what's going on, they can make their own decisions about what they want to do. And I don't no longer live in this fear that if we're in the same place, that something bad's going to happen to me. I think, if anything, something bad will happen to him.
Right. Right. And I'm glad that men are reading it and responding to it. And that's really, it was, I guess it was written in such a way that it kind of made a light bulb go off, even even though that's not, it's not my thing. I haven't dated since I was 18, so
Mhm.
I haven't even been out there, so I wouldn't even be in that situation. But I guess I thought about when I was a kid and when I was dating and stuff like that, and I went back and fortunately I guess I had enough humanity in me that that wasn't something that was part of my DNA. But it just really, it really struck me, and being a dad, it also really hit me hard because you know there like you said, there are so many levels of consent, and at at any point during any kind of an interaction, when no is said, that's what it means.
Yeah.
And I guess it really hit home for me, and it was a struggle for me to read, and it was emotional, and I'm glad you did it.
Yeah. Thank you. It was
Yeah.
very, very hard, but I had been sitting on those screenshots for years. And it's like, what am I holding on to this for? You know what I mean? So it was therapeutic for me to get it out. And I'm glad that it was able to help anybody else who saw it. And, you know,
Hmm.
that's kind of what I wanted really, is to kind of get it off of me so I'm not
Right.
bogged down by it all the time. So,
Yeah. So, and I do know that a lot of the reasons that women quit comedy is because of the misogyny of it all, and not not even rape. It's just the
mhm.
fact that they are treated differently from the get-go, and they just don't get the same, they don't get the same start as a guy. And what advice would you give to somebody that really wants to do comedy, but they're going through the misogyny of it? They're getting booked uh, because they have to have one woman on the show to show that they're diversified and all that kind of stuff. What kind of advice would you give to somebody who really wants to do it, but they're up against that type of stuff?
I, for me, being a black woman, I'm always kind of been. We have to have one of you, right? The same kind of deal with just being a woman, but there's always this other level of like oppression, right? Day to
Uh-huh.
day. It's not even in comedy. So you kind of have to go into it knowing that there's going to be things against you, and you have to acknowledge that and not let it ruin what you're trying to do.
Hmm.
Well, I think when you first start, it's very hard because you don't know who's who, and you look up to certain people because they're popular, and it's kind of like high school. It can
It
be
really is. Yeah.
it's you don't fit in, or you're weird, or you're not one of the funny people, or they're not asking you to do the show. It's like, and a lot of people will say, "We'll start your own thing, or you can start hosting your own mic where you have control," which is helpful. I never did that because I can't sit through somebody else's comedy for that long. But I think there are ways for people to get through it. Because even when I started 9 years ago now, almost nine. Um, there were four women, and now there's two.
Hmm.
There's only one when I'm not there. There's just one. When I go back, there's two. And
Wow.
women kind of either come in, they meet some guy, and they get in a relationship, and they just quit comedy altogether, or maybe something happens and they don't come back. And I think that Vegas is this very strange scene, anyway. So it's kind of hard to sustain anything in that area, especially with having women there. But I would say, you know, go in there with an open mind, keep your guard up, and keep your head down, and kind of just try to be funny, and don't be distracted by all the silly nonsense that's going on. And if you're there long enough, you'll be able to see who the people really are and what's really important to you. And then you can kind of flow through and not be worried about all the mess that's going on.
Right, right. It's got to be really tough to be the one female comic in a scene.
Yeah. And she's been doing comedy longer than me. And they know her now. You know what I mean? But I
Yeah,
imagine for her, when she first started, it was hard for her too. It takes a
yeah,
certain kind of personality to know that you're going to be subjected to some BS, and to be like, this is BS, but I have to do what I gotta do, kind of deal. So
uh-huh.
yeah.
So this, and thank you for talking about that. It's a really tough subject, and I, I just want men to just, finally figure out no means no, and it's totally okay to ask, but when the no is said, that's okay. You move on. Move on with your life. Just leave them alone.
Yeah, I think it's very hard for men to like to hear rejection. But if you're doing comedy, you're going to get rejected a lot anyways. Like,
Yeah.
and I think sometimes people go into comedy so they can actually prey on people like that, because
Mm.
they have this audience of people that are looking at them and adoring them because they're funny and they can laugh or whatever, and they kind of see themselves as like, these are the people I can actually get my hands on because they're coming to see me, which means they must want me. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's a very strange scene to be in, and I think it's very much open to predatory people for
Yeah.
that reason.
Yeah, I'm 100% on that, and I've noticed you can see that type of personality. I guess especially once you get to a certain age, you
Yes,
just see it, and no matter what they do, they can't cover it up. You can tell that they're there for a reason, and that reason isn't just laughs.
right.
It's so that they can get what they want. Yeah, I
Hmm.
definitely agree with that. Well, I like I said, I appreciate you talking about it, and you know, guys, read the article. It's going to be in the show notes. Read the article and learn from it. That's all I ask. Is that, especially if you're a young man starting in comedy and there's women there, guess what? They're not there for you.
Right.
If something was to happen, that's great, but they're not there for you. They're there for their own career. So yeah, that's all I got to say.
And
Um,
also, if you do read that, and it hits you in a certain way, if you see someone who's behaving in a way that you don't like, you need to check them.
yeah,
You can't quietly go behind closed doors and say, we don't like this person. You need to let that person know that that behavior is not tolerated around your scene, because you want to
yeah.
protect your comics and your audiences. So we got to be more vocal about standing up for people when it matters as well.
Right, right. Yeah, I'm 100% behind that. So to wrap up, one of the things I like to ask everybody is, what is one thing you know now that you wish you would have known when you started stand up?
Oh, oh man. Submitting to festivals and not getting in and stuff, none of that matters. I got a text with a friend this morning, and he was like, are you submitting to festivals? I was like, I banned festival submissions in 2019. I am over it. it's just it looks cool to be accepted and stuff like that, but there's so many rejection emails you get, or so many you even sometimes you don't get an email. You just spend all this money, and it makes you feel bad sometimes,
Yeah.
like you're not funny. And then you have to realize the people that are picking are like, old white people that don't know anything. You're just like, oh, okay. So they're never going to like my jokes. It's fine. So don't get worried about not being accepted to a festival or something like that, because it's not important.
Right, right. I I agree with that one because I've been through it, and even when you start later in life, it hurts.
It's really soul crushing when you get a rejection letter. This is the best tape I've ever made. And you're like,
Yeah,
not good enough. You're like,
yeah.
what the hell?
Yeah, and then you see everybody, of course, on social media, the ones that got in. You for some reason the algorithm just knows that you are sad and pissed off, and then you
Uh-huh.
see everybody that got in.
I love seeing the people that are like, this person is not funny, but how they make it. I love doing. That's why I don't like watching comedy, because if they get put into a festival, I can't be like they're funny or not. I don't know. I haven't seen them. I don't know. But I
Yeah,
like to assume that most of them are friends with the producer or something. There's always some political thing happening that's beyond
yeah,
your control. And that's also why I don't care anymore about them, because it's like, if
yeah.
somebody will find me, I hope at some point I'll make the right steps, that somebody that's I'm supposed to be getting seen by the people that should be seeing me, and so
Right, right.
I'll save my money on gas.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And submission fees.
Right, you're paying all this money for rejection. Like, I'm good on that. I'll do a free one, but I'm not
Yeah.
paying anymore. I can't do it.
Great. Well, I'm gonna have a link to the book. You ain't nothing but a bitch with a wig on, and
Hmm.
I'm gonna get that because I want to. I've got a family friend that has two daughters that are occupational therapists,
Oh,
and
fun.
I want to send that over to them because I hear stories from them all the time, so I'm sure they can concur with some of the stuff you go through. And
Uh-huh.
as far as finding you online, I've got your website down here, but where can everybody find you online?
I'm Shanna Christmas on all the platforms: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Ugh, I'm on that too. But it's all Shanna Christmas, SHANNA Christmas. So you can find me on those.
Great. Well, it was really great getting to know you, and I can give you one piece of advice. If you want to look for clothes that actually look good and fit you, there's a place called American Tall,
I
and
have
I've
their
been shop
sweatpants on right now.
There you go. Yeah, I've been
Hmm.
shopping there for it's really because the like the Lane Bryants of the world are made for women that are much wider,
Yes,
and the same goes with men
big and
clothes. If you go to
tall.
yeah, big and tall, it's all big.
Yeah, it's not big and or, it's just big and. So you've got to be
Yeah.
both to fit the clothing. So
Well, I'm glad you
yeah,
found American Tall. I've actually been trying to get them to be a sponsor, so I'm going to use this
there you go.
as another prod to get them to sponsor the show because I've got so much of their shit in my closet. They should.
I actually
I
met
mean,
the
they could
guys
pay
that
me in
run the
clothing.
I actually met those guys at the Magic convention in Vegas. It's a clothing convention that's usually twice a year. And I actually met them. We were at the MGM, me and my mom, and two
Uh-huh.
guys approached me and they were like, "Hey, have you heard of American Tall?" I said, "Yeah, I just bought a pair of sweats from them." They were like, "That's our company." And I was like, "Oh, you guys are based out of Canada. That's cool." And
Uh-huh.
so I actually met them recently this year, and stuff like that. So very nice people.
Yeah.
Very nice,
Well,
good Canadian people that should sponsor you.
yeah, yeah, very good. Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, thanks so much for doing this interview. It was really great getting to know you, Shauna.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And let's stop the